can't really get around Haifa without talking about the Baha'is, right? So let's start with their history, okay? We're going to take this a bit away from Haifa and then we're going to return to Haifa, okay? Because you can't understand them without knowing where they came from. So the story starts really far away. It starts mid-19th century in a little country called Persia. Yeah, what is Persia called today? Iran. My questions are always simple, just to make sure you still haven't passed out in case you don't worry about it. So mid-19th century in Persia, 1844 to be precise. Persia is a majority Shia Muslim country. It is today and has been back then. However, mid-19th century is an age of turmoil. A lot of stuff changes. A lot of stuff changes. People around the world are the whole philosophy is changing. The religion is changing. People are basically waiting for something really, really big to happen. Religious people are waiting for a Messiah to come. So on the same background, we actually have the Templar movement also started from the same kind of emotion of something cataclysmic coming about. 1844, a young Shia Muslim person stands up and says, God spoke to me. I had an epiphany. You know the original meaning of that Greek word? God spoke to him. He's a new prophet coming from the Lord. He's bringing forth a message of peace, of coexistence, of an end to wars, of prosperity and progress. He gives himself a new name, or his believers give him a new name. They call him the Bab, or what does Bab mean in Arabic? The gate, exactly, like these gates, the gate to the door. Sorry?
Bab al-Wad.
Exactly, like Bab al-Wad. They call him the gate, which is a term from Shia Islam, indicating he's the gate through which God will send forth this message to humanity. He starts spreading his religion. He has first 18 disciples. Try to keep that number in mind, 18. It's going to kind of come back to that. And then a few thousand more. A couple years later, he already splits up entirely from the Islam. They officially say that they're a new religion. They still are a completely separate religion. They officially say that Quran is no longer the holiest book. And they officially say that there's a new prophet. So all these things are complete apostasy in Islam. You cannot possibly say Quran is not holy. You cannot say there's a new prophet after Muhammad. So they started to get into clashes with the Persian government. There's also a few other reasons. Religious reason being one of them. They started to get into clashes. Very quickly the Bab is imprisoned. He's thrown in an underground prison cell in a faraway citadel. And in 1850, when he's 29 years old, he's old as I am, a young man, he's executed. Quite a horrible fashion, I have to say. He's executed. They try to kill him one way, it doesn't work out. They kill him another way. I'm not going to get into the details. Anyway, they execute him and they forbid his followers from burying him in Persia because they're afraid that his burial site will become a site of pilgrimage. They're not wrong in assuming that. Basically, the government thinks that they solved the problem though, because you know the first prophet is dead. Religion is very young. They think everybody's just going to go home and go on with their lives. However, before the Bab passed away, was killed. He didn't have time to teach some things. One of the things he taught was that there is another prophet coming after him, a greater prophet coming after him, and that his believers should wait for him. And indeed, 14 years later, in 1864, one of the believers, Mirza Hussein Ali, sorry for my not so good Arab pronunciation, stands up and says that he's the next prophet. He's the greater prophet that has been awaited for. God spoke to him as well, and so he gives himself also a new name after some time of kind of silent contemplation. He calls himself the Baha'u'llah, which means the glory of God. Later on, his believers also take their name, the name of their religion, from his name. So Baha'i people means something like the glorious people, roughly translated. Okay? He continues spreading this religion, kind of he takes his own take on it. He puts a lot of emphasis on the peace and coexistence and pacifism angle. He's very, very, very clear that there should be no fighting in whatever case, that if his believers are persecuted, they have to just succumb to this to persecution. They should never fight back. What do you think happens to him? Killed as well. That's because he just continues this. Why not? I'll tell you why not. He has good connections. What we call in Israel vitamin P. His father used to be from a minister in the Persian government. He comes from a rich aristocratic family. They cannot just execute him. He has good connections. So they do the next best thing. They just exile him to the next time empire over, to the west. Does anybody know? Remember what is the next empire over?
Ottomans.
Iraq was part of the Ottoman Empire. Exactly, the Ottoman Empire, which also controlled Israel. So we can start seeing a connection here. Okay, they exile him to Baghdad, to Iraq. He's quickly imprisoned there because his connections are not so good over there. He's imprisoned there for stirring, religious trouble. He's sent to the main prison in Istanbul, and there they have a real problem. What's the problem? He sits in prison, indeed, but he continues spreading the religion. The guards become Baha'is. The inmates become Baha'is. People come to the prison walls and they listen to his sermons. They become Baha'is. So the authorities understand there's a problem here. They have to send him to a farther away town. They send him to another prison. Same thing happens there. Eventually, they look at the, they probably open like a very large map somewhere on the wall. They look at the entire empire, which is very, very large. They think, what is the farthermost place, farthermost prison that we can basically shove him until nobody can listen to him anymore. You see that prison across the bay, Akko. Akko, mid-19th century, had no hummus, no nice train station, not such a fancy place as it is today. Mostly a large citadel and a medium town. They put him in a citadel/prison. It's pretty good conditions, I have to say. Not like the Bab, not underground. He writes in his diaries that he's in the second floor. There's a nice view of the sea, a nice breeze coming in, but still he's in prison for 3 years until eventually he convinces his captors that he's not so dangerous. He can be released. He buys a house with his believers, with his family. They all came to, about 70 of them came to Akko together. They bought a house in Akko, and eventually they buy another house outside of Akko. It's called the Mansion of Baha'i. It's a whole mansion just outside of town. Baha'i means joy in Arabic. Indeed, it's a very nice place. You can go visit it today, because today it's called the Baha'i Gardens in Akko. There's gardens here, gardens in Akko. He spends his last years there, spreading the religion, writing a lot of holy books. 1892. Pay attention to the years because it's important. 1892, he passes away there, an old man, and he's buried at the same place. Since he's buried there, and since the Baha'u'llah is the most important prophet to the Baha'i religion, even he's the second one, he's the most important one. Akko is the holiest place for Baha'i people around the world. Okay, so Baha'i people, when they pray, they turn their faces towards Akko. Much the same way the Jews turn their faces towards Jerusalem. Okay, and so we're left with the question: what are we doing in Haifa? What is all this glorious thing, and what is this nice building we're going towards? Any ideas? Place to contemplate. There's one hell of a place to contemplate, but it's 2 square kilometers. Sorry? No, he's still buried. Baha'u'llah is still buried there. But you remember another person from our story? The Bab, the first prophet. He could not have been buried. Remember, guys? There's an exam again, so do pay attention. Okay? You need to shape up. So the Bab, for 60 years, his believers hide his remains in Persia. Until the Baha'u'llah, after being released from prison, he visits the Carmel Mountain 4 times. He has a divine revelation here on his 3rd visit. Basically, he's staying in one of the houses in the German colony, which is already well developed by that time. He has a divine revelation. He understands the mystical connection between the Bab and the Prophet Elijah. He knew very well that this mountain is associated with the Prophet Elijah, as you mentioned, which is why this mountain has been holy, by the way, to every religion that passed by here. Since before Judaism, and to Jews, Christians, Jewish people, Muslim people, everybody considers this place holy, everybody associates it with the Prophet Elijah. So eventually Baha'u'llah also has this mystical connection to Elijah, and he tells his son to bury the Bab, or the remains of the Bab, at a very particular spot. It's very easy to guess which spot it is, because there's a giant golden dome on top of that spot right now. So as you can understand, his wish was granted, his wish was fulfilled. A bit later, after the Baha'u'llah passed away, in 1909, finally his son, the guardian of the religion at the time, manages to bring his remains in a very complex operation from Persia to here. The Bab is buried here, in a much more modest structure than this one, just the first floor, not this golden thing. Sorry. And so Haifa becomes, and the Carmel becomes, the second holiest place for Baha'i people around the world. Okay? So that's the year is 1909. We have one modest structure there. The whole mountain slope is just nothing but bushes and rocks and some wild boars. But the Baha'i people start having this idea. They start having this idea of building something very, very beautiful. We're going to talk about this at the next station. I like to leave it with a cliffhanger. Any questions on the Baha'i history?
So you see that peacock there?
Yeah, I see the peacock.
Does that have any link to Baha'i? And does that have any link to, like, there wasn't Pahlavi, the Shah, had a thing that looked like that?
We're going to talk about peacocks extensively.
Okay, good.
Any other questions on the history of Baha'is? Okay, let's keep going down.